When I look at youth, this should be all about development. I've been around the game, quite a bit as a player and as a coach. I always hear this is it's robotic. The robots, they don't solve problems, and it's like, well, but are we doing the players a disservice with how we make everything so systematic in our playing style? I think growth mindset is something that is super undervalued. The ones that end up getting to that level, right? There's not very many, right? But the ones that have a better chance of having more than just a cup of coffee at that level are the ones that are proficient in problem solving and proficient in figuring out solutions on their own. The ability for a kid to have a growth mindset and to reflect on where they are as a player is so valuable for he or she. You need to have courage to play this game. There is no reward without courage in this game.
Hello, coaches. Welcome back to another Modern Soccer Coach podcast. We've done so many on players' creativity, player decision-making, but we haven't looked at how much responsibility the coach may have. So today we're going to talk with Ike Opara about that topic. Two-time MLS Defender of the Year. Brilliant playing career, has also coached at Sporting Kansas City. He joins us today. Ike also works with our sponsors for this episode. Really excited to partner up with Zone 14 Coaching, a company built by coaches for coaches. If you ever ended a training session and wondered, did that session hit the mark? You will love what they have created. Zone 14's next-gen journals for coaches and players will help you plan every practice, reflect on what worked, and track progress all season long. Based on intentional coaching and backed by neuroscience, they make it easier to bring purpose to your training, so you and the players get the most out of every practice and every game. Check them out at zone14coaching.com because great coaching starts with great planning. Very, very excited to bring them on board for this episode. You will love this conversation. Ike's insight is first class. Love this chat. Really excited to hear what you think. Please leave a comment. Do you agree? Do you disagree? If you're listening on the podcast or if you're watching on YouTube, please go ahead, leave a comment, let us know what you think, get involved in the conversation. Also give it a like, also make sure you subscribe. Thank you so much for the support. Check out Zone 14 Coaching. Here is Ike. Enjoy. Ike, thank you so much for joining me today on the Modern Soccer Coach podcast. Really, really excited to chat.
Happy to be here. I've seen your work in the past. You have really good stuff. So I'm excited to be on.
We'll get stuck into Zone 14 as the conversation moves forward. We're going to pick a topic to start with, coming off the back of Bielsa's presentation on basically young players should be, if the game is moving to more adaptable, flexible game, young players should be learning different systems. But we seem to be still stuck in this coach philosophy, play my way, Ruben Arovan type of world, and there seems to be a bit of tension between these two. So how do you view this from a youth development standpoint?
And I get on here to say, and I've always said, I'm no soccer messiah, right? Like, I think everyone has ideas, and I think largely everyone's ideas are pretty good. It's just how are they implemented? Are they relevant to your environment and situation? And I think when I look at the youth space, I see, unfortunately, some coaches or some environments that aren't set up for the environment that it should be or for the right reasons. And when I look at youth, this should be all about development, truthfully. And yes, I know it's hard to be a coach and to not win games at any level, right? Because I think there's results that validate processes. But at the end of the day, you're in it for the kids and you're in it for the youth, and to expose them to as many ideas, right, that they can handle. You can't just run out every week with a new idea, but can you start to expose these kids to new ideas so that in the long run it's beneficial to them? Because as I've been around the game, quite a bit as a player and as a coach, I always hear this is it's robotic. The robots, they don't solve problems, and it's like, well, but are we doing the players a disservice with how we make everything so systematic in our playing style? And I've seen that shift just over the course of time. Just the game went from being more individual freedom to everything is tactically within a team structure. And I really just think that it's doing, youth a disservice in terms of just, can you solve problems yourself? And players love to be challenged, truthfully.
I'm going to go back and say I probably worded this really poorly by using Ruben Araman, and it probably is needed to draw a line in the sand between, for your experience at the professional level, where the system needs to be really clear. There does need to be a difference between professional coaching and youth coaching.
Definitely. And so when you're at the youth space, especially depending on your age group, right? Like the younger you are, it's more about the experience with the ball and, getting into some tactical ideas of spacing. And then as you get a bit older, right, you start to get into more of tactical based, whether that's in minds, whether that's positional, whether that's a team function. And they just keep increasing more and more as you get older, right? And you get to the pro space, okay, everything's got to be clear because now everyone's trying to get a result done. And there are some clubs that operate and do a good job of development and results, but at the end of the day, it's about results, right? And so setting kids up for that, the ones that end up getting to that level, right? There's not very many, right? But the ones that have a better chance of having more than just a cup of coffee at that level are the ones that are proficient in problem solving and proficient in figuring out solutions on their own. And so that's what I've seen when I was in locker rooms and when I've coached. I'm kind of in this tweener level of I've got amateurs and I've got first teamers coming down. I've got our own players, and it's a mix, right? And everyone's kind of in a different part in their career. But when you talk about specifically youth, you just got to expose them to as many ideas in a healthy way and live with the results. Truthfully, and live with it because you're in it for the players, you're in it for the kids, and they make the game.
With that role, do you think your role at KC too, and being that kind of intermediary between the development into first team results, do you think we're seeing an end of the kind of Ajax, the top to bottom system dictating? Do you think that needs to football's evolve from that there from club cultures?
I think yes, and also no. I think there are very few teams in the world that can do that Ajax model. Even the Barcelona that when Pep was a part of that club, if you have the ability to pick really the best players or recruit the best players all around the world at every age group, then by means be my guest, right? But that's not the reality for a lot of clubs. You don't just get to be able to buy the best players. You don't get to just have the best recruiting staff to be able to get youth players in. And so the reality is, and I've always made this point of, okay, so let's say you do want to go with this Ajax approach and you are, just some mid-table club, where an MLS, let's say. What happens when that coach gets fired or that CSO gets fired? And now and has a different idea of the academy. Well, you've now trained these kids 5-6 years, and it's one certain way for the most part, and now they're having to pivot. Yeah, that's going to be a challenge, right? And I'd argue that every age group should have. Look, you can be a possession based club, no problem. But my idea, and by no means am I right when I say this, but my idea of it is you can be a possession based club. Okay, every coach teaches possession a little bit different. Even if you have the same principle, every message is a little bit different. Every idea is slightly worded different. And so why not, run a formation with U13, let's say a 4-3-3 possession. Great. U15 is, 3-5-2 possession. 16 is 4-4-2 possession. Whatever. Like just enough where they are seeing different systems, because when you get to a higher level, look, it'd be nice to be the best team in every single game you play in, but the reality is, unless you're playing for one of the top 50 clubs in the world or games can go either way, and game plans can change within minutes, and you've got to be able to understand how it is to defend a low block versus high pressing, or how to build out versus immediately be a little bit more direct. And players need to be able to solve that, right? It's not basketball where you can call a timeout and call plays. It's alive and it's fluid, and players need to understand situations.
Yeah, when they go into that environment, that senior environment, there is not a lot of teaching. It is execute or sit back there. Well, which do you think's the biggest problem, a bigger problem? Do you think the bigger problem is the player that lacks the experience of the different systems, or the player who almost has a fixed mindset of, no, this is where I play, this is how it looks, and everything else should fall into place?
The latter, by far, by far. I think growth mindset is something that is super undervalued. Like in the reflection piece that players and look, part of the mentality and professional mentality or players that want to be pro, you are wired a little bit different, right? You just are. And so you never want to take that away from players and pull them back. But you also have to have a realistic sense of what you are and where you are. And coach or and players that go in with this fixed mindset really lack the ability to be coachable, really, in certain moments. And that's deficit to them and the team. And as you get to higher levels, when the team really, and yes, talent at some point, get you in the door and it keeps you in the door, but will get you in the door. I don't know if it necessarily keeps you in the door. It's the mentality piece. It's the growth mindset piece. It's all those other things that are overlooked that really keep you there, the work ethic. And so, yeah, like, those ones that had that fixed mindset and talent, it's challenging because they've never had to really adapt into different ways.
Oh, I completely agree. I don't know whether you agree with this, but I think this is a big problem. And the big problem I see is not as in player ego or player attitude. I think the way we coach a lot of times tactics systems in America is with so much confidence at youth level that the player actually, we talk about game intelligence and player IQ, but we set the bar pretty low with that a lot of times. And then the player sometimes believes that there's almost a false sense of security around the tactical elements of the game because there's not a lot of diversity of tactical pictures. And the competition level is sometimes not as great as where it is in other places. So I wonder sometimes if there's not a disservice, because I think everyone's acting in the best interest of the player, but I do feel as if you're almost long term setting that player up for a bit of failure tactically, if that makes any sense.
I do. And it's interesting you said it because as a coach, in my experience, right? And this is my experience, no coach wants to be looked at as if they don't know what they're talking about. Like, yes, we were all asked for advice. We were all bounce ideas off of, other coaches. But at the end of the day, you don't want to be looked at as if you don't know what you're talking about. Because there's a bit of cynicism in coaching, and that's a good thing because I think everyone goes into it with the right mindset. Some maybe take it a little too far, but at the end of the day, it is a disservice if you're not willing to reflect as a coach and go, did I do everything right to set up my environment and my team? And coaches at times will be the first people that will put their hand up when the team does well. And those same coaches will be at times the ones that blame the players when things don't go well. And the reality, it's always a mixture of both for good and bad, right? It just is.
100%. I completely agree that when you're sitting in front of 25 adults and have seen it, you need to be able to perceive that you actually have all the answers in that room, as you well know. But when you're then, I feel as if then you're at 14, 14, 16, I almost feel as if it would be better if there was more awareness or more education around the variables that take into consideration. And the way I see coaching being implemented at again, like I consume coaching in North America. That's where I live. So it's not a knock on US coaching, but I do think that our culture of sport, like football, there's a way to throw a ball, there's a way to shoot a basketball, there's a way to throw a baseball. I think sometimes that too, there's a way to play soccer. And the confidence that I have kids that play different sports, the confidence that I saw someone trying to teach my 10-year-old to shoot a basketball, like, that's fantastic. I love that. But that actually wouldn't work in football because you're taking away, you're probably limiting technique at that stage. And I wonder if culturally we are, I at the youth level, I guess my question is, how could we open up a little bit more for not humility, like they're humble people. It's how you're packaging the game to kids is actually not realistic to what the game looks like.
Yeah. That's a good question. And truthfully, I don't know if there is an answer. And really, I don't, because uh, this country, for as a lot of the positive this country has, at the same time, it is the negative. It is entirely too big, right? And I mean, it's the truth. And there's so many different entities within the game, right? There's the pay per play, there's the nonprofit, there's your soccer. There's so many different, uh, and I don't want to say cooks in the kitchen in like in a negative way, but there's so many that have the ideas on what this game should be that I really don't know if if there'll ever be one consistent way, or maybe not in my lifetime, maybe, right? But I just don't see it anytime soon. Uh, but I do think that clubs, decision making groups, just go into it with the player at the heart of it all. We stand a better chance for development moving forward. And I know that's I know that's not the easiest thing, right, for an organization to adopt, because maybe there is revenue that they're concerned about or whatever. Like every club and entity has their own issues. But if everyone just goes into it with the player matters the most and really means it, I think everyone has their mission statement and values, and things will be there that will always say player development. But do you really believe it? Do you breathe it? Are you willing to sacrifice and die for that? Because if that's the case, those are the kids that you're setting up for success, whether they make it in soccer or not, truthfully.
Yes, yes. Ah, I went to a tournament last year in Salou, Spain, and there was a group from England Premier League club. I got talking to some of the coaches. They were playing a different micro cycle, was a different system for the kids at U14, and it, I've been not obsessed with this ever since, but I've been thinking about this over the last 12 months. I actually think, wouldn't it be better if, I always think it's too easy for the coach sometimes to be, listen, it's my philosophy, I'll roll it out, I'll play it. Well then, like we talk about, is it 20 years of experience, or if it's 20 years of having the same experience? And sometimes I think it's 20 years of having the same 1 year experience, where would it be better if the coach was actually challenged to coach a different system, a different style? Do you think that's stupid, or do you think that's got something?
Yeah, no, I think it's got something. And again, I think that it's a great point. I actually was thinking about this last week because so here in Kansas City, we play, 4-3-3 more often than not. And then, some of the, unfortunately, we had some firings and changes that were made within the club. And so when I became interim head coach, I was kind of given the freedom of, hey, you go explore systems and formations that you've always kind of thought about, do it. And so that time for me was critical in terms of the growth, because I didn't just willy nilly, create something, right? It were things and processes and principles that I had already kind of thought, and getting to actually implement them, over, a few weeks here and then pivoting to this one here was by far the biggest growth that I took as a coach. And I learned things that I had no idea I was going to expect, right? Like you go into it as a coach, and again, you want to have that confidence that you know exactly what the two or three outcomes will be. But the reality is that's not always the case. And I learned so many different things about systems that I played or tried, or principles and tweaks that I made that I had never thought about. And I saw the reactions or the reactions that could possibly for our group or negatively for our group, that I was like, oh, this is something for me to take back, reflect on. How do we utilize this, or how do we improve in this area? And so I think by far that is one of the most important things a coach could do. And it takes time, like to create a whole new system or formation and not have it in an idea exactly which principles everything will lie out to be. It does, right? And that's okay. And I think the best coaches are the best communicators to their team to explain what they're doing, why they're doing it, and this is the hopeful outcome. But it might not be the case. It could be it could be something else. We'll learn from it. I'll take the responsibility as a coach. You guys just have come into it with an open mind.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. We were talking before we started recording about Danny Cruz and working with Danny. Just before I left, the project was the off season was Columbus Crew system 3-4-3. Take a take a look at it. And I had to do, each coach had to do a report, and I had to do a presentation as well. And the process, like, that was probably about 3 to 4 weeks. And it's funny, like, it's exactly how you described. It's like, it unlocks so many aspects of, well, you review your own system, you look at player profiling, and then you actually have the conversations around, like, no, I don't see this working. And the conversation as a coach, I just think, like you said, that measured against, hey, let me go to the USB and pull out my game model from the last 5 years. Like, is that really going to move the thing forward?
Yeah. And by the way, I think Columbus Crew, I think Wilfried Nancy is one of the best coaches, maybe the best coach in MLS history. And I'm not talking about from a trophy standpoint. I'm talking about from a tactical, knowledgeable implementation system.
Unreal.
Yeah. But outside of that piece, right, you're spot on, because think about if coaches had this idea, and as we as coaches have this idea that, okay, it's not going to be perfect by any means, especially as you're trying something new. And also the extra work that it's going to take to create now training exercises that are game-like for the system you want. Oh, now you've got to create a training exercise that you saw from the game that you can improve upon, or maybe that you didn't do, or that you did well. Okay, let's take that exercise and let's add another variable to it, because they implemented what I want. Like, all of these things for me is exciting as a coach, but it takes work, right? And I do hear when you say, like, a coach has been doing something for 5 years, it's kind of worked, he kind of knows what he or she is going to get. No need to really change, right? And at the youth level, you're doing these kids a disservice by not exposing them.
And it's challenging because I love the space, but I just think we're being sold to a narrative that there's an information problem, lack of education of coaches, and if you educate them, we will be okay. And I don't think it's that. I think information is so accessible now. I don't think that's the disconnect. I actually think the disconnect is disengagement. I see more coaches that are either burnt out because they're solving so many problems, or they've just been living the same, like they haven't really made the progressions in terms of their career, and they're kind of stuck career-wise, and they are doing the same thing again. I just think it would be fun from our landscape. I reckon you could ignite some coaches if you just challenged and said, hey, listen, see that 4-2-3-1? Can't run it next year. And like you said, any session you have, I never even thought of that, because that then should put the onus on then an audit around session planning, because, oh, hold on, this isn't relevant anymore. Like, at least then you're getting the wheels turning about football. And I think that's what we're lacking. Do you think that's harsh?
I mean, yes and no. Like, I think it's easy for me to say, especially having been in pro environments, and living in the space that I have. I understand that's not the world for every youth club, or every youth coach in a club. I know that some are paid, some are volunteers. And so I get it's challenging. And that's why I always kind of root into if you have the kids at the heart of it every single day, you will hopefully inevitably push on, right? Whether that's principle changes. If you want to run the same system, no problem. But can you see the new principles that are being implemented in these type of systems, right? Can you change your pressing, right? Like we talked about mostly with the ball, but what you're off the ball, what your transitional principles. Like, can you start to implement some new things that maybe just don't, overarch, just completely change your, if you're a coach that doesn't necessarily have the time, and again, I understand not every coach does, but can you start to just expose kids and youth players to new ideas? And look, they might not be right, they might not work, but you'll learn something in the process, guaranteed.
Hello, coaches. We will take a quick break here. One of the biggest challenges for any coach, especially at club level, is staying organized and intentional throughout a long season. And that is exactly what Zone 14 coaching is all about. They make high quality player and coaching journals that help you plan smarter, track progress, and build better habits on and off the pitch. These are next gen tools grounded in intentional coaching and reflective journaling principles, and also backed by the neuroscience that shows that athletes perform better when they think about what they are learning and not just performing reps. The Coach Journal is a season-long planner for real coaching life. It's got field diagrams, planning pages for sessions, match outlines, and tournament plans and reflections. The Player's Journal offers the athlete their own way to stay accountable. It is filled with guided prompts for setting goals, tracking match stats, and reflecting on performance. If your goal is to bring more focus and reflection to your team this season, please go ahead, check out zone14coaching.com. As I'll show in the interview, they sent me over a couple of books. They are outstanding. Absolutely love what they're doing. The questions are really, really intentional. They're not just based on a reflective of a practice session, but they also get the players to think in a real soccer context. I think it's an outstanding product. I would love for you to check it out. Zone14coaching.com. Thank you so much for the support. Thanks so much to Zone 14. For the coaches, by the coaches, please check them out. Back to Ike. You mentioned Wilfried Nancy there and the system. I mean, tactically, which teams today do you mark to watch, or who jumps out to you and you say, you know what, I don't miss their games, you know, like I enjoy watching that style or system or whatever it is?
Yeah, I would say just from a coaching perspective, I think Wilfried and the Columbus Crew. I think that every game that they're on TV and I've got time, I will go out of my way to watch them. I think that, you know, and then there are teams around the world, even MLS, you know, that have, you know, high end talent, right? And then that's exciting to watch, and seeing how coaches get those type of players into scoring positions. That's usually how I've seen Belonga and Son. Okay, how do they isolate moments with these guys who have elite qualities to create goal scoring opportunities? Those type of that's fun to watch as well. But just from a system perspective, I think for me, Columbus Crew is top, right? Over the last few years, top. And it doesn't mean you always win, right? But just the ability to dictate games, the entertainment factor, the process, like just the whole package is impressive.
Okay, let's get into Zone 14. I've got the books here. Kindly sent. A player one and a coach one. Now, on the coach, we talked a little bit. Sorry, on the player, we've talked a lot about you. You've been really, really clear on the kind of philosophy around reflection. You've mentioned reflection a couple of times in the interview, and there is a lot of reflection in this book, where almost a personal reflection on games, sessions. Talk a little bit about that, and very, very detailed, but also like trying to lead the player into how they think about the game.
For sure. Yeah. And so this came a lot from my experience, right? As a player, very reflective at all steps of my career, from youth based to collegiate to professional. And I think it's what kids need. It is what kids need. And I can be as blunt about that. And not because you know, I've got some great idea. It's just the ability for a kid to have a growth mindset and to reflect on where they are as a player is so valuable for he or she, right? And when I look at it, I just think, you know, let's use Kansas City for instance. U18. There's probably at best, I don't know, 30 kids, probably all in the metro area, that will have some sort of professional experience, whether it's next pro, MLS, abroad, etc. So that means there are thousands of other kids, right, that won't play professional level, and to give them the tools to be able to reflect will not only benefit them, you know, in soccer, but whatever it is that they choose, if, you know, soccer isn't going to be the end all be all. And so I've always been a big reflector. You know, I've gone through hard moments in my career, and it by far got me through some of those challenges and those hard times.
Yeah, I love I'm trying to learn more about, because I think it's such an important piece, is the player reflection piece. So I'm trying to learn more about how to unlock that, because I do think players play so many games over here. They play, they practice. I was talking to coach yesterday. It's just a constant go, travel, come back. When I see questioning, I always pick it up and look at it. And one of the things that I jumped out at me this was number 9, which was around creativity, which was what was it about the session did you try? I'm like, oh, this is interesting, because we talk about creativity in the moment, but we never talk about, I never really hear about it talked as a reflective piece.
Yeah.
What's the thinking behind that?
The thing about it is, as a coach, especially we mentioned earlier, right? Like the service that coaches can put players in by making them, systematic and robotic. It's, I want kids to have the bravery. You need to have courage to play this game. There is no reward without courage in this game. And so to give these kids the foundation of thinking like, okay, creativity is that's soccer, that's football. Like it is a part of the game. And were you daring enough? And maybe not every session is going to be guided for that, but that's the reflection piece that you go, okay, was today one of those sessions? It was. Did I do it? I didn't, right? Like, and just getting kids off of their cell phones, right? Like, have a tangible copy of a book, sitting down and thinking, what did I do well and what I didn't do well? That to me is super. And honestly, it unlocked things that I had no idea when I created this, which was, parents, have sent emails and testimony that my kid really struggled with performance anxiety, and this has really helped, you know, prepare them for games. It's helped our relationship as parents. And like that for me is more powerful than any win or loss as a coach. Like to see that connection that these players are just unlocking of this, the cycle benefits that these players are having. Like that to me means more than if you win a game.
I see it with my 9-year-old. Came home the other day, had to write a short story for school, and you'd swear the world was finishing. They had her 2 sentences on an objective. I love writing, so I was designated to go and help him with it. And his response to me was, "Dad, just plug it into ChatGPT and let's get this over with." I'm like, can you not write stuff down anymore?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it is going to be, again, as we move to apps, even like in the world of readiness apps, where it's one score between 1 and 5, we probably do need some space for the player to actually think about these experiences a little bit more.
I agree. I agree. And I do think that there's going to be a shift, if not starting to be a shift of fans understanding the I mean, I think screens have always been an issue, and that's not new, right? But like starting to get away from that with phones out of schools, and to try to get kids to get back into reflection, writing, sitting down, um, and so yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you on that piece.
Yeah, it's something I think is going to be massive. I mean, the layout for the book, you've also got goals for the year, technical goals, you've got the tactical goals. So it's very, very much like you are trying to touch on, from a player reflection piece, trying to get all 4 corners of the model in.
Yep, yep, and that was based on because again, players, no matter if you're rec, premier, for whatever the case, want to be challenged and setting a goal, going back to seeing did I succeed, did I not, why I didn't, or why I didn't, like be able to stay with it, right? Is what I mentioned earlier, right? Trying to set these kids up for success and to be problem solvers and to be reflective and to clear up that mental state because inevitably the technical and the tactical will shine, right? It just will. And so, yeah, just trying to touch upon all of those social emotional, really, of kids and players, just to give them another tool to be successful, or hopefully, right? That's the goal.
The coaching notebook, so it's practices, games.
Yep.
I mean, same thing. It almost brings you to, talk about winning habits, like winning habits as in the training program and winning habits, as in getting a warm up right and getting the press right. But like winning habits from a personal development point for a coach has got to be preparation, review, and reflection, right?
Always, always. And when, I was actually just at a youth tournament out here not too long ago. And I was just wanting to take it all in. It's been a while since I'd been in one of those spaces just to take it all in. And, I saw some coaches on their phones trying to lead the warm up and what their schematic is. And I saw, 3-ring binders. And I saw all sorts, and I saw like there's definitely a need just to be able to have a streamlined, tool for coaches that it's all in there, right? And I'm a pretty organized person, but just like any coach, I find myself like, oh, this idea or this thought, let me write it in my phone. Oh, let me put it I'm on my laptop, let me put it on my laptop. Or I'm on the dry erase board, write something on the dry erase board. Like, and then you go, oh wait, where did I put that again? And you're trying to get it all together. And so this idea that like, okay, you can still do all those things because you're not gonna always have a book with you everywhere you go, but to come back to the book and write the idea in there. So it's there, right? And so now you don't have to go thinking, oh, did I leave that on a random computer paper in my office, or is that on the dry erase board in the state? Like you can always come back and write that idea down, so it's all stationed in the static journal. And that, so I got to try that this past year as a coach, and I enjoyed that piece, just having it all there, not having to put back and forth, trying to, where I put something. Yeah, it just kept me more streamlined in the goal that I wanted to achieve.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's a really good outlet as well. Like I find, when you're at the senior level and you have a staff of 4 or 5 people, it is, and everyone has specific roles. Sometimes
Yep.
it's talking to someone in a really specific way about what. But when you're a club coach, and I've experienced this myself. Like when you're by yourself, sometimes as coaches, I don't know whether you're taught, but it definitely forms a habit that everything pops into your head. I have a responsibility to get it out, to tell, either teach or correct. And I find like when you see someone with a book, it almost, I don't think there's any, like it is a really good form of, people say about therapy, mental health, putting it in actually puts it in the word and gets in here, remember it better. Like, yeah. I mean, that's all thing. I actually interviewed Parameritus Soccer last week, and he was talking about a subjective score that they have for the younger kids. And something that I've been thinking for this for a while about. So as coaches, like what we're very, very good at is evaluation and assessment. I think what the gap sometimes is that we forget about, like, in a tryout or at the start of the year when everything's fresh. It was like, oh, this player, wow, see them control the ball. Like, just join your team. You're like, oh, tight spaces. Wow. Sometimes then as the season goes on, you're like, oh, they can't do this. They can't do that. So sometimes it's good to go back and be like, yeah, no.
Well, I'm like, yep, yeah, spot on. And look, I think a little bit of human nature, right? Like, I think every coach is guilty of that. If not, most coaches are guilty of that. But I think that reflection piece, which there are some prompts in there, always has you guided and rooted in, okay, why am I doing this? Right? Can I go back, like kind of what you mentioned, and whether that's my thoughts on, that preseason and that player, or is it, what did we do last week? What were my feelings about? Instead of trying to guess and remember, like, oh, I can go back and read what I wrote, right? How that game was, or how that session is, or that session was. And truthfully speaking, I mean, everything is on the computer these days, especially as you get to higher level in terms of creating your session plan, which is great. You can do it, but I find myself being able, like, if I write something down, I can get way more in detail, than trying to be on the computer creating a session plan with those little squiggly lines and I can barely even read what I wrote because to try to get everything in there, you're using size 6 font. And so just for me, I'm better at processing and creating, and, when I can write something down. And yeah, so that's kind of been, again, maybe I'm not everybody, right? But I found so much success. And maybe, I don't know how you feel about the computer and writing a session plan, or which one you prefer or not, but I'd be curious your thoughts.
Because I'm a modern soccer coach, and my roles at the senior level, there was everything had to be done in software. But I use notebooks for, as an analyst, I would not talk to a coach without a notebook. Your research is talking to them and you have to pick up, and I would forget a lot of stuff, so I write all that down. But then the other thing that I use a notebook for is I always have it in front of the TV. So when I'm going to watch a match now, I'll have the notebook because I try to pick up on a pattern, or I try to pick up on a movement or a concept, and I put that into the notebook. But I think there's nothing better. I think there's nothing better than filling up a notebook for a coach. I think that's better than 3 points.
You're not entirely wrong there. I agree. Like to be able to go back and look and track your progress, it is, yeah, it's, if you're like I said, about the game, kids, sure, and coaching, truthfully, it's, if you want to be intentional with your coaching, it's all process, right? Like it's all process. And again, yes, results validate that in time. I understand that, but like when you're a coach, you've got to be living a process and trying to better the environment, better your team. Like, and that's never overnight. Yeah, you might have some things that pop out sooner rather than later, or earlier than you may expect. But everything's always for us. When you're dealing with humans, and 11 of them on the, let alone 18, 20, your whole team, it's going to be a process.
All right, last couple. Zone 14, talk about kind of that journey. You mentioned about a feedback from parents. So I mean, how much are you getting to clubs? What are you trying to do with clubs? I'm sure clubs are going to be wanting to contact you.
Yeah. So we piloted it in Kansas City as a start, and got unbelievable success with the clubs that we worked with. And the things we found out even with that was just so the books kind of go correspondent. So if a club wants to dive into it, right, a coach has a book and the player has a book, and the amount of touch points a player had with the coach, as opposed to, as coaches, you always feel like you need to pull things out, right, of a player. No, it was kind of the opposite, where the players would come to the coach and be like, this is what I'm thinking, or this is what I've been feeling. And they attributed that towards the books, right? Like, and that was pretty cool to see. And at the end of the day, too, like, I think this journey for me, and when I found that this was a need, was, I went into it going, okay, how can we help the coaches? And quickly found out that no, it's the player. Like, and it's if both, yes, but it's the player that always is looking for the extra, right? Like, and whether you realize it or not as a coach, that's what it's always, that's been the game. It's what it's always going to be. Right. And so that was pretty cool to be able to witness.
Friends, I have to ask you, everyone who's kind of immersed in the US soccer landscape, I was asking this question over the last couple of years, really, is like, for someone that's obviously played at the highest level over here and coached at the highest level, and your experience at college as well, and then you're now in the youth space, you've got like a good grip on all the different facets. How have you, where do you see the game in its growth at the minute? Do you think it's in a good spot, opportunity, or how would you assess it?
Yeah, I think it's an okay spot. I do think with the World Cup coming, we have a massive potential. And it kind of feels like we aren't capitalizing quite yet as a country. But I do think inevitably when a World Cup is in your country, you will get excitement that hopefully will roll into, you know, more coaches or more play. Like we have made strides as a country by far, no doubt. But I do think that we are right at this level where I don't know if it's plateaued per se, but we can take another step. And with the World Cup coming here, now is the time, right? And as we say that, these journalists, I can only imagine, and hopefully I really hope this, because our game is so beautiful and it's for everybody. And I hope that there's a world where, you know, the 35, 40-year-old soccer dad who's never been a part of soccer falls in love with the game because their kid fall in love with the game and they want to get involved, right? This hopefully could be a tool for them to say, okay, I don't really know a whole lot about soccer, but these prompts that are there, these reflection pieces that are there, hopefully can give you a starting point on, okay, these are some ideas as I've fallen in love with the game through my kids. So I think we have a major opportunity. I hope we can capitalize, and I know that's involving U.S. soccer and even MLS and academies and all of these things. I know it's not just one entity, but I really see a lot of potential with soccer in this country, and like most people do,
Yeah.
and we get there.
Last one, they're putting you on the spot. MLS Defender of the Year, 2-time Defender of the Year. Freeman was really good the other night against Uruguay. What's your take on the centre back slot for the World Cup?
Oh gosh. Well, yeah, man, you really did put me on the spot there. Uh, I don't even. That's tough. Well, I would say this. This might be a hot take here. That's not necessarily about the national team, but the art of the defending is dying. Period. And it hurts my soul a little bit to see. That's maybe for another. If you have me back on later, we can talk about that.
Let's do a part 2, because I would love to go down that one where, is it because of the physicality dropping out? Is it because they're now expected to play quarterback? What?
I think you're on to something with the latter. I don't want for a teaser for the next one. I think you're on to something with the latter one. I've got even more stronger opinion.
Right. We're doing part 2. We're doing fantastic. Thank you so much. This has been fantastic. Zone 14, we'll get coaches on it. Really appreciate the support, and let's get everyone to get a copy of it.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. Appreciate the time.